Hello, this is the last lecture in my series of lectures on Theory of Consciousness, my book. In today's last lecture, I want to address some intriguing questions. First, in chapter 12, the last, there's chapter 13 too, but we're going to cover chapters 12 and 13. I asked the question, how can we reconcile the erratic and arbitrary changes in momentum exhibited by us, by biological entities, with the very regular and smoothed out behavior we observe for at least objects at the quantum level and their changes in momentum. Remember that our primary postulate is that all changes in momentum are due to the actions of intelligent conscious entities, even those at the quantum level and even those at the astronomical level. And we concluded by invoking the Heisenberg uncertainty principle that what's going on at the quantum level, at very small and fast space-time realms, that what we observe as smooth behavior is really, or we suggest, we postulate that it's due to the actions of statistical ensembles of intelligent conscious entities acting over very long time periods from their perspective. From our perspective, that very long time period is virtually instantaneous. So we're much slower. We operate in a slower space-time realm. But the biological realm, how can we reconcile that with that same picture? I mean, do our biological entities' actions average out over very long times from our perspective to something that's simple and smooth? We really don't know. And we really don't know what those forces that we would create as a statistical ensemble of biological entities would be. But I propose, or I put forth a conjecture that perhaps the behavior of intelligent biological entities has a serious or a very important effect on the structure of the at the astronomical scale. In other words, perhaps biological entities ultimately affect the way planets move around their stars. Maybe they affect entire galaxies as they colonize the universe and advance. Perhaps they have an effect on the astronomical realm. Okay, so that's the conjecture I put forth in chapter 12. In chapter 13, which is entitled just Stream of Consciousness, kind of a real clever pun, right? I just tell you what I believe. I don't hold back. I just say, I believe this, I believe that. I think that the principle of Occam's razor, which is that the simplest explanation that's consistent with the facts is usually the right one. Well, I think that applies to our postulate that all changes in momentum are due to the actions of intelligent conscious entities. And moreover, I do think it's possible, and it's partly because I was an NMR spectroscopist and I would observe what is called coupling between different nuclei inside molecules, that there can be interactions that don't require bosons traveling at the speed of light to be mediated. In other words, there's something called quantum entanglement when you have a state that composed of, say, a whole bunch of a statistical ensemble of conscious entities. The coupling of their behaviors may explain a lot, but I'm just saying that's what I think might be going on. I also believe that, as I pointed out before, consciousness persists after death for human biological entities and indeed for all entities. And I think it's as I pointed out in this last chapter of the book, if you look back on what a couple of really smart guys said as they were dying, they said it to their loved ones just as they were dying. Thomas Edison said, "It's very beautiful over there." Steve Jobs said, "Oh wow, oh wow, oh wow." Now some might argue that this is just the last firings of their their neurons in their brain, and perhaps that's true. But at least it's the idea that consciousness persists after we die is certainly consistent with the idea that consciousness is everywhere at the microscopic in the quantum realms, and the biological realm, and in the astronomical realm. It's everywhere. So consciousness persists, I think, has a good basis. So what can we conclude from that? We're not alone in this universe. I think that all intelligent conscious entities have feelings and emotions and can experience love. Perhaps they can experience hatred or certainly sadness. All these things are there. I also think that the quantum realm entities, which I believe construct biological entities, know everything about every biological entity that they create. Everything. The feelings that we have as humans, I think the quantum realm entities that build us know. So they know our experiences. Because remember, everything for quantum realm entities takes forever from our perspective. I mean, from their perspective, it takes forever. So they can watch these slow things happen, like nerve impulses propagating through the axons, etc., etc. To them, it's a slow process. They know what's going on. So I believe that's the case. I think they really do know. So this idea that consciousness persists after death, that we don't need to be scared, that it's just like a big black void of nothingness and get all depressed and worried about it. The idea that there is life after death has given me strength to persist through the normal torture that every human being experiences just in day-to-day living. I mean, there's great days and rotten days, but persist. I think that death takes us back to a place that's quite happy and probably more advanced than the biological realm. So it's probably apparent to you that I believe that there are lots of gods, meaning lots of intelligent conscious entities who are creating other intelligent conscious entities. The gods for us as biological entities seem to be inside us. They're at the quantum realm, building us, making us, trying to perfect us. Now, since that holds true, if all these postulates hold up to investigation, and I would never claim that everything I've said in the lectures or in the book, I don't claim it's all absolutely correct. It's a starting point. It's just, I'm trying to start a discussion about what might actually be going on, and maybe someone else can take it farther. But from my perspective, because consciousness causes all changes in momentum, I think consciousness is the unified field. Really, all there is consciousness. I think that if it could be done to break up time into infinitesimal increments, just super small increments, there wouldn't be any quote unquote objects and matter. There would only be consciousness. Because consciousness creates changes in momentum, therefore it creates energy. And energy, as Einstein showed, E equals mc squared, is equivalent to mass for other space-time levels. So the consciousnesses at the quantum level, their behavior creates mass. And that we have already looked at a good example of that in the nucleus, where the sum of the rest masses of the quarks and other subnuclear particles that build up the nucleus is only about 1% of the observed mass of the nucleus itself. So it seems as if the relativistic effects of very fast motions inside the nucleus give rise to what we observe as the mass and the object nature of the nuclei. So that's what I think is going on. The statistical ensembles of perhaps entire universes of intelligent conscious entities together create what we observe as objects and the relatively simple behavior that can be described by physics and chemistry. I do think that it's more likely that the consciousness and feelings of entities at all levels are similar, because why would it not be? I mean, it's not a strong argument, but it's something that can be put forth as a postulate. I think it's likely that the way the universe works is kind of fractal. Everything's built from small things that add up to build up a bigger, more complicated thing, but in a very exact way, in fractals at least. You keep doing the same thing and you get these very complicated and beautiful structures. I think that's also similar to what may be happening with consciousness. I would say that humans are nowhere near where they need to be to have a stable and happy organization of humans and other biological organisms and other conscious entities. Of all the biological entities that I'm aware of, here's Rocky. Here's the best biological entity. The best biological entities are doggies. Dogs are the best because they have the greatest proclivity for kindness and love, and they're just good guys, aren't you, Rocky? Yeah, Rocky's a good guy. So there's Rocky. Good doggy. So there are some underlying principles that we've kind of pointed out. There's actually a mistake in the book. I hate to admit it, but I say that all fundamental bosons meaning the gluons, the photons, gravitons, all those, I said, and that's true, they travel at the speed of light. But I forgot when I was discussing that the weak nuclear force uses bosons that have mass and therefore do not travel at the speed of light. And those also have serious effects. So it's a little bit more complicated than I presented in the book. The other principle, though, but basically the ones that build us, the quantum realm entities, they use photons, the kind of electromagnetic forces, to build us biological entities, and those bosons do travel at the speed of light. And I still think there's at least elements of truth in the statement that fundamental bosons are the quanta of consciousness. In other words, let there be light, I see the light. All those adages are consistent with the idea that light is consciousness. I think it's possible that, as I said earlier in this lecture, that the biological realm runs the astronomical realm in the same way that the quantum realm runs the biological realm. I think it's possible, but I don't know for sure. I also believe, as I've already said, that death occurs for all individual entities in all realms, but that consciousness persists in a different form after death in all cases. It is possible, and I would say it's more likely than not, that the realm, in a certain space-time realm, whether it's a nuclear or the atomic, the electromagnetic, the in-realm perspective, I think, is similar in perhaps even appearance and behavior to what we see in the biological realm. We don't know if there are mountains and oceans in the nuclear, inside the nucleus. We can't know that. Similarly, we don't know if there's mountains and oceans and backpacking trips in the atomic realm. We just don't have enough detail. The Heisenberg uncertainty principle guarantees that. And one last thing, most religions are monotheistic, kind of supporting the idea that there's one God that is all-powerful and all-conscious, and he or she or it did everything. What the ideas I put forth in this book are different than that. There are gods everywhere. They're all the conscious entities that build us and build everything. The gods, and they seem to build from small things that operate quickly to larger things that operate more slowly. I think that's true too, just based on the evidence. Now, it's possible that there's some way that the very large, the astronomical, somehow folds back into the microscopic realm. I can't quite imagine how that would be, but it is possible. We just don't know. Finally, I would just say that what I think is that every intelligent entity's life is an adventure, and it should be enjoyed. With that, thank you for listening to me.